And good morning, everybody. Hello, this is Colita. I have Andrew.
Hello.
And Jen.
Hi.
Welcome to our IDEO U Creative Confidence Series, and this is all about storytelling, and particularly how you focus for impact. We'll get started in a moment, but first, for those of you guys joining, please look for this lovely little Q&A icon. It's usually going to be on your left, or this icon, a little grid of squares, so you can join our Q&A panel. What should happen when you launch these two things, there should be a lovely grid that shows up, and I see that Mary and, let's see, Quentin are joining. Great, so you guys found your way in. Once you join, say hello, say where you're from, where you're calling in from. And this is also the way that you'll be able to add questions to our panel this morning. So I'll give an overview. In this webinar, I'll first give an intro to our fabulous, I'm so excited. We have Jen and Andrew. We'll give intros. We'll then talk a little bit about the course, and we'll demo one of my favorite lessons and one of Jen's favorite lessons as well, called the bar test. More on that in a moment. And then I'll have some burning questions. We have 3 topics we want to talk about, and then we'll open it up to you guys for Q&A. So let's start with intros. So seated here on this corner of the table, hello from, we're broadcasting from San Francisco Bay Area. It's a lovely 9 a.m. and I hope a lot of you are joining from all around the world. That's usually what the case is. Who do we have? Feel free to call out some people. Hello.
We have
May from
Christina.
London.
We have Ali from Toronto, Canada.
Okay, Jackie.
Carlos from Mexico.
I love it. Can we get it on this computer too? Yes. So Jen, This is the fabulous Jenn Mayer. So Jen is our instructor for Storytelling for Influence, and for many years at IDEO, she was our design director in brand and storytelling. Mm-hmm. And you influenced a lot of people and clients like Marriott, and who are all the different groups you've worked with?
National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy, Nike, Anheuser-Busch, like lots and lots.
Diverse.
Yeah.
And now you are an IDEO fellow. You are still very much connected to IDEO, but now you are the creative director at Omada Health.
Correct.
And Omada Health is a fast-growing health organization all around preventing chronic diseases, like diabetes too. And so tell me a little bit about what you're doing over there now.
Yeah, so I'm leading the brand and marketing team. So I'm responsible for helping us tell our story to the world and getting both customers excited, getting enrollees excited, getting the press excited. So all of that.
I'm so excited to hear how storytelling plays a role in places like business and health. So we'll talk about that. One other fun thing to know about Jen is you're known for what's called the Fish Locker Band. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So unfortunate naming, I wasn't responsible for that. We are part of an all IDEO band that actually practiced in a fish locker. For those of you who don't know, we are on a pier here, Pier 28, and there was an old real life fish locker with metal walls that we practiced in. So amplified band, metal walls, not a great idea, but it was really, really fun. And we just took on the name Fish Locker as our band.
Did it smell the locker?
Luckily it didn't, but only after we sweat it. Amplified band, metal walls, not a great idea, but it was really, really fun. And we just took on the name Fish Locker as our band.
We thought we'd just have you play back, hearing yourself a little
instant
bit.
replay. Isn't that great? That was amazing.
For those of you who don't know, Jen has an amazing voice. Amazing voice. I love when you sing. We won't make you do that here.
Okay,
but
I might be tempted though.
Oh, please do. Okay, if you so go. And then our other fabulous guest, Andrew, is the directing animator at Pixar, and you've been working in animation storytelling for over 20 years. And I just think about if we could measure all the joy that you've brought to kids and adults and families, like we could fuel energy in an entire city. I think
we made a movie about that.
Yeah, that's true. What I love too is a second thing to know about you, Andrew, is as masterful as you are in your craft, you also are really passionate about constantly learning and being a part of teaching and growing your own storytelling skills. And so Andrew actually took Jen's course, and it's out.
I was so amazed that you did that. That's fantastic.
That was amazing.
And so we'll talk a little bit more too about why you continue to want to build out your skills, even though you're so masterful. And the other thing about Andrew is you teach at a lot of different places and been responsible for creating workshops and teaching and learning opportunities for other people. Do you want to share a little bit about some of those passions?
Yeah, sure. a lot of the times, we would want to go out. I would usually go out with some of the other artists at Pixar or whomever, and we would teach about storytelling, character animation, design, staging, filmmaking techniques. And then just recently, my brother, who works in business, has been getting me to kind of go to places that I wouldn't have thought to teach storytelling, like businesses. And so that's been a real interesting, eye-opening experience, just that there are so many other places that need to have those storytelling skills.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been really fun for me.
We'll dig into that.
Yeah.
So the third thing to know about Andrew is you are known for creating secret spaces at Pixar. I need to know what that is.
Well, it's like, it was almost like a mistake that, when I moved into this office, there was a air conditioning vent, a little window, almost sized door with a key. And so I crawled through this place, and there was a big, huge space. So we put up some Christmas lights. We got little martini glasses and tiny little airplane bottles, and we would go in there and we would hide. and then we got caught. But the whole idea of getting caught was that instead of getting in trouble, it was like, you got to see this. And then everybody else started bringing by people. So the next thing I know, I'm hanging out in there with, like, a lot of celebrities and different personalities. And it's just, I've met so many different people because of that room.
Oh,
and then
amazing.
I moved later to another secret area.
And do you have another secret space?
Yes, I helped do 3 at Pixar. So
Wow.
the other one is the Lucky 7 Lounge, the casino.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's brilliant. I want that.
I know. It's kind of like a combination of like Harry Potter and being John Malkovich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The room of requirement meets like really small spaces.
Love it. So again, welcome. For those of you guys joining, we'll be diving into a little lesson moment. If you haven't yet found it, there is on the left-hand bar, there is a Q&A icon and a little grid like this. And this is what enables you to join the chat. And once you get in, please introduce yourself. Say hello and where you're from. And we will be taking Q&A near the end of this. So first, I want to give a very high-level overview of the course. So Storytelling for Influence. When designing this course, we looked at a lot of other courses out there, and there's a lot of great content around how to make a good story in terms of thinking about character and plot. But there was something we felt was missing, and it was really about designing it to influence people and how you create a story that you can prototype and really have impact. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say a little bit more about that? Why is that important?
I think it's so important just because, everything that we're trying to do in business is influencing each other. Like whether it's getting people to sort of get on board with our ideas and move something forward, or sales, like there's so many ways that we're trying to influence people. And I had just noticed even within our clients that often things just got stale. Like you'd put all of this effort into putting out, decks and decks of stats and numbers, but it wasn't breaking through people's sort of brain-based radar and getting to their hearts where actual decisions get made.
Yeah, I love it. So 3 of the ways that you help teach people how to do this is 3 parts of the lesson. One big part is what we call designing the brief, and it's all around thinking about your audience and the blueprint and what is the impact you want your story to have. Another big part of it is prototyping. So at IDEO, we're known for human-centered design and prototyping. And of course, people think about product prototypes, but you can prototype stories. What does that mean?
Absolutely. I mean, prototyping stories is one of the most important things that you can do. And actually, before I joined IDEO, when I was more of a solo writer, it was really difficult for me to do because I wanted to write something straight through and I wanted to get it perfect the first time. And that never actually happens in the world for anyone. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you start with something and then you just keep iterating on it. And, for us, we always kind of try to start with a really simple thing.
Yeah.
Like maybe some people call it a log line or a controlling idea or whatever. But it always is what is the question you're trying to answer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the third big part of it is, the third part of the lesson is how you design for impact. What are all the tips and ways of giving feedback in collaborative ways to really create impact for stories? So we're going to simulate one of those moments. And one of the big key parts of the lesson is what we call the bar test. And I'm going to have Jenn explain why it's important.
Sure.
And then we're going to have Andrew share a little story, a 2-minute story, and then we're gonna give each other feedback on how to make that even more impactful. The types of things you would learn in the course.
Right. So the bar test is deceptively simple idea, and it's just based on this idea that any story that's a good story to tell, you should be able to quickly tell to your friend over a drink at the bar or a coffee at the coffee house, and sort of get the important bits of it. Like, and if it's an interesting story, it should pass the bar test.
Okay.
So what we started to do here at IDEO was for one of our storytelling series is we brought people out, had a glass of wine, and shared our stories really quickly, and then gave immediate feedback in the moment about, hey, here's the things that were interesting to me. Here's what I want to hear more about. Here are the things I don't think you need to share. And, just all of those kinds of just initial gut instincts of like a little more of this, a little less of that. So that was like the roughest first prototype you could think of. It's a back of the napkin kind of thing, nothing that you prepare for. It's like, hey, just tell me a story.
I love it. It's so accessible. Don't make it too precious. Just get started so you can improve. Okay. Andrew, you up for playing with us?
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll pretend, there's only about 1,000 of us here in this bar in this moment.
It's more like a rollicking nightclub.
Yeah, and it's at healthy water.
Yeah.
So we'll start by just share a 1 or 2 minute story.
Okay.
And Jen and we'll take notes and give some feedback afterwards. And then you'll also give yourself some feedback on what you think didn't work about that story.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
So I was just recently over in the UK, and I had to go to an appointment that I could not miss. So I am, to a flaw, always early. And I always want to get to the train station or the airport way early. It comes from my father, always bringing us early. And so I told my wife and kids, I'm going to go to the train station, get a spot. I'm basically going to wait for the train to come. I'm going to put our bags there. I'm like, all right. So my wife is the opposite. She's right on time, but almost to a flaw, not being early. So I get there early. I've got my bag set. My wife's not there. The guy says, your train has been canceled to London. But if you take this one right now, then you're gonna make your trip.
Okay.
All right. So at that point, I didn't know what to do. I thought, should I get on the train, or should I not get on the train? If I get on the train, what kind of person am I? I'm leaving my family. They don't even know. I'm going to call my wife, tell her I'm on the train already. So I ended up not getting on the train. I waited for them. I was really upset. I told them that we missed the train. I'm sitting there waiting for the next one. We finally get on another train. My wife basically sits down to me, and she just basically looks over at me and says, you should have just gotten on that train. I could have basically just taken care of the kids. And I just kind of looked at her like, of course. But so I ended up being a little bit late, but I thought it was worth it for me to kind of stay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story.
And cut. So let's reflect some feedback. How can all three of us, how can you make that even more impactful? What tips and feedback do we have?
Yeah.
Well, a couple things that I was thinking of right off the bat. Like, I loved the moments when you sort of reflected on what you were feeling in that moment and saying, like, what kind of person would that make me? How would my wife feel about me? And that sort of reflection. I would love to hear more of that, like those moments of your inner dialogue and what were you struggling with and how you might see yourself.
Okay.
And then also on the other side of that, I loved moments where you started to give me a little bit of a picture of what that train station was like and what you saw. And I'd love to hear more about that as well, to beef up, put me in the station with you. The guy who told you your train's canceled, what was he like? And what were you feeling when he said that? So those moments that really put you in the room.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Mine's similar. There were two points where you talked about emotion, and I wanted to amplify them even more. So the first one was giving me the context of how you feel. Like I always have to be early. My wife, so like I wanted that pulled apart so I could really empathize at both ends.
Sure.
And then the apex of the story was when you heard it's canceled. It's like at that point, and I just wanted to draw that out and feel a little bit more. So those were two moments that I felt I was excited for more.
I totally agree with you. If I was making that into a short or a movie, I was thinking about it that you would have wanted the character to get on the train. because then you're like, gosh, I can't believe this guy left his family. So that over the course of the short, he would basically make up for that and realize something at the end, and learn something.
Right.
And so that's what I couldn't help thinking of that while I was going through this, that maybe I should just get on just to explore the character.
Totally. And I think that brings up a good point for if you were telling this story in a business context, is coming up with what's our key takeaway there? Like, what's the thing you want us to remember, or the lesson, or like the main point that we take out of it? And then, and I think sometimes that's also an interesting thing to think about, is sometimes we don't know that yet. Sometimes you begin with a story, you're not quite sure exactly what the point is, and you kind of have to work your way through to get to that moment and be like, oh, the lesson here is about, respecting my family, or maybe it's about like taking risks, or just figuring out breadcrumbs that you can leave to lead us to that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
That segues well into let's continue on that thread. The impact, the relevance of storytelling in non-obvious places like business, like health, like finance, like all these places that are not Pixar. Like Pixar is obvious. What relevance does storytelling have outside of it? And what we're going to do now is, so we'll have a little bit of a conversation. We'll have at least the last 15 minutes for Q&A from all of you guys. So please continue to add in your questions, and we'll be monitoring those. And yeah, let's talk about what's the relevance of storytelling in places other than just purely entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, currently the job that I'm working in is in healthcare. And so you think, well, how does storytelling matter in healthcare? And I would say it's probably one of the most important things that you can have in healthcare, because if you think about it, to motivate people towards something, you could have eventually saved someone's life. Like, not to be too dramatic, but if I can help someone understand, for example, that they need to get themselves checked to see if they're pre-diabetic, like that could save their life versus, handing out a very cold brochure with a bunch of facts and figures, and they're like, this isn't really appropriate to me. But even in a more businessy sense than that, there was something that happened recently where we were working with a big national company that was one of our clients. They'd used our product in a sort of test way. They hadn't really rolled it out everywhere. And it was time for them to sell into their board of directors whether or not they were going to roll this out nationally, which would have meant our product to be available to thousands more people and potentially, impacting thousands more lives. And it was a big sales thing, right?
So can I guess, is it, so I would expect a nice PowerPoint with a lot of data.
Exactly. We were armed with decks upon decks upon decks of why this was a good decision. But ultimately, the most important thing that made the difference that we brought in and didn't even need to share the decks was a video that we had made of the people who had used our product and how it had impacted their lives personally. And just a beautiful little piece of sort of almost like a documentary film storytelling that no one needed to see the pages and pages of facts and figures, because they felt what was happening and they understood the importance of that in their organization, and it changed everything.
Sure.
So are there things I can learn about wonderful storytelling that then I can bring into places like business? Like, what is it? What makes stories sticky? Just at a high level, and how can I learn from that as a way to apply it in other places? Like, let's just talk broadly. What makes for a sticky story? What do you look for?
Well, I mean, what do I look for?
Yeah, or how do you create that? Yeah.
I think you obviously want to have a character you can root for. And you want to be kind of in the shoes of that character. And a lot of the times, what you don't want is a passive character, a character that really doesn't do anything, or make decisions. Because ultimately, with a good story, you're kind of trying to change the character's belief system or what they believe about the world. A simple example might be Finding Nemo. He basically believes that the world's really a dangerous place. And you know that because of the setup in the kind of prologue where his whole entire family got eaten. And so then at that point, you are with that character. You kind of believe in why he believes the world is that way. And then you want to see, basically through the middle of the story, the second act, throwing all these things at him so that he changes and you're trying to question him, do you still believe that? You know, do you still believe that? And then hopefully by the end, he's changed, you know? And so you're with that character on their journey. And so that's what I think one of the things is really having a character you could root for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that holds in a business context as well, because you're telling, in the example that I just gave, we were telling the story of a woman who was hesitant at first to use this thing, wasn't really sure if she needed it, used it, overcame some challenges, had like that ultimate triumph. And it was the story of one person, right? We weren't making a composite character of you know, this could stand in for 1,000 people. It was specific, it was real, and it was relatable to somebody that you could say, like, I know someone like her, I understand that. And that made a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Building on this, I am going to grab one question because it relates. It's all that. Like, how do you get a non-creative firm or someone who doesn't naturally have storytelling as part of their organization to understand the importance of it? So anything else, and like you even mentioned the work you've done with your brother, is there's so many great places to bring storytelling practices into other parts of how we think and how we move people.
Right.
Anything else you want to talk about? And just
yeah, I think I would be lying if I said it was easy, because you know, changing culture, as we know, within an organization, especially a large organization, can be really, really difficult. You can feel like a salmon swimming upstream. But I do think that it'll take a little bravery and a little bit of leading by example. And I think in the same way that we prototype everything, I would say start by prototyping little steps. Like start by putting a little bit of a story into a presentation that you give and starting to see the reactions and letting it sort of grow organically and giving permission to others through your own actions and saying like, hey, it's working for me, you try it as well. So I think that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
We, you know, whenever I go out to a place, I don't necessarily want to connect the dots for businesses. I'm basically giving them the same exercises that I would give film students, but then we kind of, you know, push them towards what story they're trying to tell. So I want them to draw a little bit. I want them to come up with their own stories, their 6-word memoirs or something like that, or even something where they're finding an image through a scribble or something. You know, so we have all these interesting exercises that we try to give people in order to think creatively, but not necessarily saying this is exactly why it works in business, you know, because I don't know that world as much. It's more about the core storytelling stuff.
Got it. So maybe I'd love to hear more. What is the role of a team or collaborating to get stories to work better? Because I think, I'll speak for myself, I have this myth of a great storyteller is this kind of solo artist who just labors and has some kind of natural ability. Is there, do you agree with that? Is there a role for collaboration in teams in making stories?
You want to go first?
I was gonna say, I mean, it seems like you should start first on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
what you do.
I think that where I work is all about standing on the shoulders of people that are better than you, right? Some people are really good at story structure. Some people are good at writing dialogue. Animators, you know, you're breaking down a little piece of the story and you're trying to figure out the story point. But collaboration has a lot to do with how you give notes as well and how you give the feedback. And I love the way that I've always gotten feedback. We go into a dailies room in the morning. You've got basically 50, 60 people around you. Anybody can make a comment.
Wow.
Even, you know, the person that is cleaning up the place, you know, and I've heard that certain people have had genius comments that have gotten into a film or whatever. So it's about being completely open to anything, almost that kind of yes and mentality instead of, no, I don't think you should do that, you should do this. It's more of building on people's ideas.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I think, you know, I kind of hinted at this about how I worked before I came to IDEO and how that had changed. And, you know, I think really being able to start with just an outline of ideas and have people give feedback there and having a team of folks who are on your side giving feedback at different points was, it was such a revolution for me. And now I feel like I can't really think any other way because I find so much value in it, you know, not being precious about the ideas that you have and you know, putting things on Post-its first and moving it around and saying like, this doesn't belong here, but I find a place for it here. So let's rearrange it. And sometimes you need to have that out loud on a board where people can look at it and react to it and do what they need to do with it, as opposed to trying to keep everything in your head in a little screen, which it closes you off to any other ideas.
The precious thing is huge. That is not being precious in the beginning is just super important, and the ability to basically blow something completely up is what makes a lot of things get so much better.
Yeah.
You know, I totally agree with you.
So the great thing is this is something you teach in the course. So I'm going to go there for a second, and then we'll go to some questions. But so one of the ways you designed this course was that people could practice your own story. So the entire course is based on a story that you want to practice and develop. So that's one key thing. And then it's also designed to work in teams and collaborate. And you get feedback from coaches, such as this fine gentleman or this person, and improve that. And so one of the things I'd love to hear about is, Andrew, you took the course, and why and what did you get out of it?
You know, I just wanted to kind of understand, you know, I had been to a lot of these presentations where people are delivering a keynote or a PowerPoint, and a lot of them were really boring and had a lot of bar charts and data. And so I kind of wanted to wrap my head around why that was. And I respect so much IDEO's work and all the great things you guys do. And a lot of people from Pixar have come here, a few. Like Kat. And so I was really interested to see how you guys tell stories and the differences. And it's very similar. It's just in a different, you know, delivery method or for a different reason. And so I got a lot out of it, and I found it really creative and really compelling. So I super enjoyed it. So, yeah.
We loved having you.
Thanks.
And I'd love to know, like, what motivated you to design this course, or just to think through, why is this an important topic for you, Jen?
Well, I think first of all, it's just incredibly fun to share. Like, it's something that I feel passionate about, something that I love to do. So there was that maybe selfish motivation. It was like, that sounds like a lot of fun to be able to share that with people.
Sure.
On top of that, I feel like storytelling really humanizes business. And when things get more human, that's when change happens, right? The more that we can connect with one another, the more that we can get real, the more that we can, you know, touch people emotionally, that's when real change starts to take place. So if you tell a great story, you can change the world. And, you know, that's where we're coming from and for IDEO. And that's what I want for more people out there in the world, to have that power to influence and bring about positive change.
Yeah.
Do you find that a lot of the stories that people are trying to tell are within a company to the same people that they work with? And that is kind of like, almost like, get behind me, I've got this idea and I'm telling the story about it. Do you guys find that there's a lot of that?
Yeah, I mean, within the course, is that what you mean?
No, within, you know, some of the clients that say you work with, it's more about, how do I shift people's perceptions by telling the story within the company? Because some of these are giant companies, you know.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew, the joke, for all the years that Jen and I have been at IDEO, I can't tell you how many times I've heard different organizations say, we want to be the Pixar of X, of banking, of health, of whatever it is, because it's they want to be able to influence and impact people in human ways. It's what you just said, and I think the inspiration that so many organizations get from places like Pixar and IDEO is part of what we want to make real for people.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on it exactly. That so many of our clients, the greatest ideas in the world will go absolutely nowhere within an organization unless you can convince other people to get on board with you. Because otherwise, you're just the crazy lunatic in the corner going like, "We should do it this way."
And it is a good idea, but if it doesn't have the impact, So with that, we have about 15 minutes left, and thank you again, all of you. We're so excited to have you here, and we're gonna look off to the screen for a second as we look through some of the questions, and let's get some audience questions. And we have some upvotes. Let's see. Ooh, let's do this one. What is a good exercise for a team to strengthen their storytelling muscles?
Good exercise to strengthen storytelling muscles. Well, the exercise that we shared, the bar text, is a fantastic one because it's it's so loose and easy, and it forces you to stop trying to think about your story and just tell your story. Like, because we are all incredibly natural storytellers. Once you stop like trying to write something down and you just kind of go off and, you know, hang out with your friends and family and you tell them, this is the thing that happened at work today. You wouldn't believe what happened.
Yeah.
And you start to tell them the story. You're the most natural storyteller in the world. So anything that you can do to sort of foster that.
Sure.
I think another thing that's sort of similar to that is this idea of whenever someone's struggling with me, I'll ask them, well, what are you trying to say? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, write that down exactly, or even record it on a phone so that they can hear the story that they just told me and then just transcribe it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, it's, I think we do a lot of improv. And there's a lot of people that come in where you can go take a class and either do the whole improv storytelling thing where you tell a story one word at a time between two people, or you go through the 7 huge steps of a story. You know, that's one of the things that we do. We take a story through 7 steps, you know, the whole once upon a time and every day because of that. And we also have people give a story and say maybe they come up with the beginning and the end, and then everybody fills in the story. And then it's very important that everybody critique that story and see where the holes are. So we do a lot of that, you know, with these kind of improv type of lessons.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Can I come play with you?
Yeah, sure.
But I love to, I mean, both of you really humanize this process. So I would not call myself a storyteller, but I think a lot of people feel that way. And what you're both clearly saying is actually anyone can, and you don't have to make it this huge effort. Just start and practice.
Yeah. I think it's that creative confidence thing, right? That people are so scared of thinking that they need to either create something that is Pixar level storytelling, when in fact that's the product of, you know, years of work and tons of people. So they're afraid of that, or they're just afraid of people, you know, calling them out saying it's not good enough or whatever it is. We all get that weird stuff. Even people who do it professionally, like I get scared to share things sometimes too. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that I work with a bunch of people that are professional story people. They don't even consider themselves storytellers. So I'm just like, what?
Really?
And so I think it's a constant learning process. And like you said, it is doing. You can't just read a screenwriting book or a book on how to do it. You have to get in there and get your hands dirty and just try it. And you know, that's the only way that you get better.
Yeah. So I have one more that I see. There's 13 upvotes for this one. For more structured technical fields, such as engineering, programming, how can we apply storytelling, and I love this, and story listening into our process and execution? Because one of the things I think behind that too is just what is the effect that story has on people? So why is being able to be story listeners, or what happens to us when we hear a good story, regardless of what technical field? Like as humans, I think something happens to us.
Yeah. Well, I think we're hardwired, like biologically, physically hardwired to be moved by stories. And we've got, you know, millennia of human history telling stories, sharing stories, all of that. It's just part of who we are, and it comes quite naturally. So I think that's an important piece. And when you listen to a story and it starts to affect you on a personal level, you remember it in a different way.
Right.
You know how to share it in a different way, and it sort of cements it in your brain in a different way. I think in terms of those more technical organizations, when you can bring a technical idea to life with an example of, like, you know, here's this piece of engineering, and here's how it might affect the world, and sort of help me see where that fits into the bigger picture, like all of those kinds of things, that's really powerful.
I like that. I like just even the simplicity of where your story starts. Do you start with the details of what something is, or do you start with like you said, the impact of where it can be, and then I get naturally curious about the technical details of how that could be possible? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, in entertainment, I think people start at different places with the story. I was just talking to a director the other day that said that he started with a piece of dialogue from the movie he was working on, something that was a conflict, but it wasn't necessarily the beginning or the end. It was kind of right in the middle. And then the story kind of grows out from that. So there really is no hard, fast way that it has to be done this way, or you have to hit the midpoint of the story on page 30 or whatever. I think it's really pretty organic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. Any of these prompt your curiosity?
Oh, some of the questions? Jen, what do you think?
Oh, I'll get to the how upcoming. This is a good one for you, Jen. What brands, people, or businesses are your favorite storytellers right now,
Oh, wow.
and why? And this, you too, Andrew. Like, where do you go inspired? Where do you get inspired?
You know
for
what?
Storytelling.
It is, I'm sure this does not sound very heady of me, but I am constantly inspired by TV. Yeah, like I watch, not that much, but I watch a lot of really quality shows on HBO and Netflix and like all of the companies that are pumping out amazing content.
Sure.
And you would think like, oh, that's not really relevant to the storytelling that I'm doing in business, but I'm always picking up on little things where I'm like, oh. For example, I don't want to give away too much about the last episode of Game of Thrones. But the first, 10 minutes of that, like the way that they used music was incredibly inspiring to me. And I went immediately, I found the song and I started thinking about building dramatic tension into a story simply through sound. And, it's just rattling around in my head, but I know that that's going to become something that I use.
Yeah, absolutely. Filmmaking wise, lately I've been liking films that use storytelling with staging. Wes Anderson's films, I like the way that he stages things very symmetrically sometimes, so that when you do see something that's asymmetrical for the story, it kind of is there for a reason.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Television, I feel like, is really telling some of the best stories. As far as companies, some of the companies that I think that are telling good stories, maybe Nike. I like the way they tell a story and make you feel like you're in the shoes of the character that is doing that thing. So I think that's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
cool. So we have time for maybe 2 more questions. We have about 5 minutes. One of the questions relates to the course, and will the upcoming course relate to personal, individual storytelling or storytelling for an organization? I love this question. So both. So you will choose the story that you are going to prototype and work on throughout the course. And in the past runs, we've had individuals do it. So you might be doing it for a personal project. You might be doing it for a work project. And then we also have teams do it. So the course is designed for breakout groups so that any team, like we had several teams the last run, work in a private chat space and then have regular meetings outside of the course to work on an organizational story. Mm-hmm. So it's set up for both teams. And do you have any advice on getting started or setting up for a team-based project?
Make a good name.
Okay.
That's because when I was looking for a team, I was like, all right, which one's got a really cool name? And then, so I thought, I really do think that you got to make a good name for your group first.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would imagine trying to choose folks that you think will be like supportive and helpful in the process, but also that might think radically differently than you do, so that you're getting a diversity of opinions, folks who might mirror the thoughts and wishes of the people that you're needing to present to and tell the story to, so you can get that kind of feedback as well.
Yeah,
that's helpful. One last question, and then anything. I'll look. But is there anything else that's rattling around in your guys' mind that you just want to share as you think about storytelling? What keeps you energized about it?
There's one thing that just dovetailing on the thing that we were just talking about, the personal story versus the organizational story, and I was just thinking about how much they're often the same. Right? So we might tell that story within an organization, and one of the really powerful things that you can do is say, here's what I felt about this, or I had an experience with this and it changed me in this way. And so by embedding your personal story within an organizational story, people can start to relate to you. They can start to empathize in a different way. There's no reason to leave the personal out of the business.
Yeah. For me, it's basically specificity. And that for me is one of the things that excites me, is whether it's the specificity of a character or a story. I don't think that archetypes and tropes, they kind of get you to a certain point, but then you have to get specific about the story, the character, and really draw from yourself.
I agree.
I can't resist this question because Jen, you touched on it as well. Last one, and then I'll summarize. The one clients often ask. So clients often ask selected ideas based on, they select ideas based on business objectives or data and evidence. How do you bridge that towards a story that perhaps can be supported by those data and evidence, or is meaningful to customers? So we're often designing for the future, something that doesn't exist yet, something that doesn't have data yet. But I'm just curious about, how do you think about the role of data or the lack of data and still being able to tell a good story?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a perpetual tug of war in storytelling, and I think you can use data very effectively to support a story. And where it breaks down is when that's the only story that there is, because you can't. It's like that idea, the difference between data and insight, right? Like you can use the data to support what you're doing, but unless you can draw meaning from it, then I don't know if it's particularly useful. So I think humanizing the data with a story, and I also would push on the idea that I think people say that they make decisions based on data, but in reality, what they won't tell you is they make decisions based on what feels right inside. And they can't quite put their finger on it, and they would never admit it in a group of people. But I've heard this again and again from people who are quite high up in business, that at the end of the day, yes, they were armed with the data and that was important, but it was a personal story that got them to go, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Get it in a different way.
Sure.
Yeah. I think there's something we said too around back to the story listening. So when we are presented with data, we are wired to kind of trigger the skeptical side of our brain. So if I say, so we've done a lot of research and our studies show that, and I'm a researcher, so I believe in this, you naturally as a listener start to say, okay, I need to be very methodical in how I take this in and evaluate if that's true or not. Versus if I start the same statement with, let me tell you about a time when you just, that simple phrase, you relax into a different part of your body and become curious for what I'm about to say next. So just the simplicity of understanding how you frame what might be the same information has a huge impact on how it's going to be received.
Absolutely.
So,
It's almost like you don't want to repeat the same thing, especially in a film, but same with a presentation. The first time you like it, second time you're like, okay, you've heard the same thing. Third time you do the opposite and you turn off.
Yeah. So love it. So thank you. So that is where we are going to wrap. So our course, Storytelling for Influence, starts July 13th, and it is available for sign up at IDEOU.com. And we have 5 weeks left still to sign up. And I know, Andrew, we're excited to have you again. You'll be coming in as a coach this round.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And we look forward to having you there.
I'm very excited.
And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.